So I have my parts all washed now, and I have them separated into the two colors I want. I have orange over here and black over here. I have my RIT dyes, orange and black, and I have the bowls full of the water and vinegar mixture that I'm going to use to actually dye these. Now, I find that a half cup of water and a half cup of vinegar works well for me, and I've never noticed any kind of vinegary smell left over after the dye process, so yeah. I mean, it's pretty simple how to do this. And then a half teaspoon of the dye into it. And the reason for the vinegar is that you want, when you're dyeing, you want the very surface of your plastic to be melted just a little bit. That will allow the plastic to penetrate more. And that's also why you want these to be really hot, like close to boiling. These are just tap water temperature right now. Mostly because I have no idea how many takes this will take, and well, I don't want to burn myself on accident in the meantime. Once I get the dye put in, I'll go heat them up off camera, bring them back, and show you what's going on. But first, I do want to warn you, do one color at a time, and don't do many pieces at a time. If you're doing tiny pieces like this little piece here, do that separate. That will keep you from losing anything. I've lost parts before dyeing, and I've made big messes keeping myself from losing parts dyeing. So just take your time and you'll be fine. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do my oranges. And this is because it's a lighter color. I don't want to get dye on my fingers, say black dye, then handle one of the pieces that are supposed to be orange and then have the dye rub off. And yeah, it's not pleasant when the dye spreads beyond where it's supposed to. So I have my bag of dye. It's orange. One-half teaspoon? Or wait, is that teaspoon or tablespoon? I don't care. And then I'm going to put it into my dye mix. Stir it up. And set this off to the side for now. Close this up. And I'm going to go heat that up off camera. I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back with my very hot vinegar orange dye bath. And the first four parts I'm going to use to dye are these, because they're pretty big. Not much risk of losing them. So, plunk, 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 and plunk. Now, as you'll notice, they're floating, so just keep tapping them, and that will make sure that whatever sides are close to the surface that aren't actually submerged, that they'll get submerged. Now, one thing to note is that they look pretty white in there right now, but they're actually pretty orange. It's that this bath is so dark that it's hard to tell the difference. But just leave them in for a while. Maybe 1 to 3 minutes. I mean, it's not hot enough to deform the plastic, but it is pretty hot. If I had, say, used acetone and made this hot water boiling, you wouldn't want to stick these in here longer than, I don't know, 2 or 3 seconds at a time. But this is a pretty safe way to do it. Like, here's the head. Pretty orange. Not as orange as I'd like, but it just takes time. I probably could have poured in a bit more of the dye, but it's fine. If I poured in more dye, it probably would reach a richer color, but, well, even if it gets to a richer color faster, the problem is that the dye won't have had enough time to seep into the plastic. You want the dye to seep in pretty far, in that way, in case the plastic ever gets, I don't know, chipped or dented or anything, you won't just see white there. The dye will have penetrated far enough in that you'll just see more of the dye. So using a small amount of the dye tends to be a more wise decision, I've noticed. I mean, I still use a decent amount. The longer they stay in here, the better. I mean, depending on how many parts you have, or even how big some of the parts may be, this could easily be an hour-long thing, so set aside a decent amount of time before you start doing this. And between dyeing the parts, like after I take these out, I'm going to take them back to the microwave and heat them up again. Or not the parts, but I'm going to heat the bath up again. And the reason for that is to make sure that you get the most uniform dye among all your parts. Because otherwise you'll get stuck with, I don't know, maybe one or two that just aren't as brilliant as the others. That's a pretty nice looking orange. It just takes some time. I mean, it's faster than painting, because with this, once the color's in, it's in. You don't run any risk of the color scraping off or anything. It's faster. It's easier to do it uniform, especially if you get plastic that doesn't float. And what's also nice about it is that it doesn't add any thickness to the parts, so you don't have to worry about the fit changing after this. I realize I'm rambling, and I probably should end this soon, but yeah, I'm going to go ahead and end this, and I'll show you the orange parts when they're all done, and then we can start working on the black parts. So I have my orange pieces dyed. Now we need to move on to the black pieces. We put these over onto the side, and these are the pieces I need to dye black. I'll put these to the side. Here is my black dye. I washed this off and dried it. Put in a half teaspoon, tablespoon, whatever size this is, you can read that. And then stir it up. And this is super inky black. After your parts start getting dark, you will not be able to see them in here. So I'm going to heat this up in the microwave off camera, and I'll meet you back here ready to dye the pieces. So here I have my black dye, all heated up and ready for parts. I'll just put in these two pieces because they're the only really big pieces. Now the black dye, it takes a while for it to get really deep, because otherwise it'll just look purplish blue. But when you get it really dark, it will be really dark. So it just takes a little while. Actually, probably could have put more of the black stuff in. Actually, I think I'll do that. Just speed up the process just a little bit. It's not like the orange where I want a very specific shade. This is black, and I want it to be black. Stir that in, and that should speed up the process immensely. With other colors where you might want to be careful about the exact shade of color, I wouldn't recommend doing this, but it's more than fine for black, because, I mean, unless you're going for one of the intermediate shades of this, where it's kind of bluish, the deepest shade possible is the ideal. Yeah, see, it's starting to darken up a little bit. It's not quite what I want, but it's getting there. Maybe for a Decepticon or something, if you were to do a repaint project or something, that would be a good color. It'll take a while. I mean, this dyeing stuff's a slow process, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off, and I'll meet you back when all the pieces have been dyed. The oranges are done, now all we have to do are a couple blacks. So here we have the parts all dyed. The oranges are a nice, vibrant orange. The blacks are a nice, dark black. One thing I did off screen, just because it's such a simple step and I didn't want to have to take the camera over there and risking it wet, is I took each piece and I ran it under the cold tap for a couple minutes. This was to wash off any extra dye and just clean it off one last time. But yeah, everything's real nice. Now, one thing you will notice is that my hands have a lot of black dye on them. If I were to touch the orange parts right now, this black dye would rub off on them. Another way I can get rid of it would be to sand it off, which would ruin the finish of the parts. So, after you dye pieces, you can go from any color to black. But after you dye pieces, do make sure that you wash your hands really well, make sure they're all dry, and give your hands plenty of time to ablate the dye.